They say history has a way of whispering in the quiet corners of the world, but for Mr. Thompson, a dedicated history teacher with a passion for the past, history was more than just a subject. It was a way of life. Every morning, he unlocked the door to his classroom with a sense of reverence, as though each lesson was a chance to bring the past back to life. The room was small, cluttered with books and maps and relics of civilizations long gone. Yet to Mr. Thompson, it was a sanctuary, a place where he could share his love for stories that shaped the world. One rainy afternoon, as he organized a stack of old textbooks at the back of the classroom, his fingers brushed against something cold and metallic wedged between two volumes. Frowning, he pulled the object free, a coin tarnished and weathered, its edges worn smooth by time. He turned it over in his hand, squinting at the strange symbols etched into its surface. They weren't like anything he'd ever seen before, and his heart quickened with a thrill he hadn't felt since he was a child, listening to tales of explorers and lost cities. Mr. Thompson set the coin on his desk and leaned in closer, the rain tapping softly against the classroom windows as he traced the patterns with fingertip. What was this doing here, in his classroom of all places? The question echoed in his mind long after the final bell rang and his students had filed out, their chatter replaced by the hush of an empty room. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a trinket. It was a doorway, a clue to something much bigger. That night, Mr. Thompson pored over books and online archives, his desk lamp casting a pool of yellow light as he searched for any mention of the strange symbols. Hours turned into days, and though the frustration of dead ends gnawed at him, he pressed on, driven by a curiosity that refused to be silenced. His mind buzzed with half-formed theories and forgotten legends, and each new discovery, no matter how small, felt like a breath of fresh air in the dusty recesses of his memory. One evening, he stumbled upon an old manuscript detailing a lost civilization rumored to have thrived in this very region. Xalenia, a city said to have vanished beneath the earth centuries ago. The manuscript's illustrations matched the coin symbols almost perfectly. Mr. Thompson's pulse quickened as he compared the images side by side, the pieces of the puzzle clicking together with an almost audible snap. Could it be? Could this coin be a relic from Xalenia itself? The thought was almost too fantastic to believe, yet the evidence was undeniable. Driven by a mix of excitement and disbelief, he began to map out the clues, overlaying ancient texts with modern schematics of the school building. The more he looked, the clearer it became. Xalenia wasn't just a legend. It was real, and it was hidden right beneath his feet. He could hardly sleep that night, his mind racing with images of buried temples and hidden passages, of treasures and secrets waiting to be unearthed. The next morning, he arrived at the school before sunrise, his breath fogging in the crisp air as he slipped inside the silent halls. He made his way to the basement, flashlight in hand, the beam slicing through the darkness to reveal cobwebs and forgotten storage bins. Heart pounding, he searched the walls for any sign, any crack or seam that might mark an entrance to the lost city he was certain lay below. Hours passed in the flickering light, dust swirling in the air as he pressed on, his fingers brushing over cold stone and damp concrete. And then, just as he was about to give up, he felt it. A faint groove in the wall, almost invisible but unmistakable beneath his fingertips. He traced it, breathless, and pushed gently. The wall shifted with a low, grinding moan, revealing a narrow passage shrouded in darkness. Mr. Thompson's heart thundered in his chest as he stepped inside, the air cool and damp against his skin, the smell of earth and age filling his senses. He moved slowly, each step echoing in the silence, the weight of centuries pressing in around him. The passage opened into a small chamber, the walls lined with carvings that glowed faintly in the beam of his flashlight. Strange symbols, like those on the coin, winding and weaving together in patterns that seemed to pulse with life. He reached out, running his fingers over the cold stone, and for a moment he felt as though he was touching the past itself. A sense of wonder filled him, mingled with a flicker of fear. What secrets lay hidden here, beneath the floorboards of his ordinary classroom? And what price would he have to pay to bring them to light? He turned back, meaning to leave and gather his thoughts, but as he did, he saw something glinting in the corner of the chamber, a shard of metal, half buried in the dirt, catching the light like a star. He bent down, brushing the earth away to reveal a fragment of what looked like an ancient tablet. its surface covered in symbols that danced and shimmered in the beam of his flashlight. His breath caught in his throat as he realized what he was holding. It was a key, a map, a message from the past. But even as he marveled at it, a low rumble shook the ground beneath his feet. The stones groaning and shifting around him. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and Mr. Thompson's eyes widened in alarm as the walls of the chamber seemed to tremble, as though the very earth itself was waking up after a long, restless sleep. He clutched the fragment to his chest, the weight of history and mystery pressing around him. And in that moment he knew he had only scratched the surface of the secrets that lay hidden in the depths below. What he had found was only the beginning, and somewhere in the darkness beyond, the rest of Xalenia waited, waiting to be discovered. But that's a story for another day. The ground was still trembling faintly as Mr. Thompson backed away from the ancient tablet, his mind spinning with questions that seemed to echo off the stone walls around him. He held the fragment tight, the symbols etched into its surface glowing faintly in the dim beam of his flashlight. The air in the chamber felt charged, as though the weight of centuries was pressing in on him, urging him forward and warning him back in the same breath. He forced himself to take a steadying breath, the dust and earth swirling in the cold air, and he turned to leave the chamber. But as he stepped into the narrow passage, a sudden gust of air blew through the darkness, carrying with it the faintest whisper of something ancient and alive. The walls seemed to pulse, and Mr. Thompson's heart thundered in his chest. He stumbled back, his flashlight flickering as he fumbled to keep it steady. Ahead of him, the passage stretched deeper into the earth, the darkness beckoning like a promise and a threat. He hesitated, every instinct telling him to run, to retreat to the safety of the world above. But the fragment in his hand seemed to hum with energy, the symbols glowing brighter as though urging him onward. He swallowed hard, his curiosity burning brighter than his fear, and he stepped forward, deeper into the passage. Each footstep echoed like a heartbeat in the silence, the cold stone biting at his fingers as he trailed them along the walls. The air grew colder, the scent of earth and time thicker with each breath, and he felt as though he was moving through a dream, half real, half memory, the line between the present and the past blurring with every step. The passage opened into another chamber, larger than the first, the walls covered in carvings that seemed to dance in the flickering light. In the center of the room stood a stone altar, its surface covered in dust and fragments of what looked like ancient pottery. Mr. Thompson moved closer, his fingers trembling as he brushed away the dirt, revealing symbols that matched those on the tablet he carried. He set the fragment on the altar, the ancient stone almost warm beneath his hand, and he felt a surge of something, energy, memory, a spark of the past that flowed through him like a current. In that moment, he understood that this was no ordinary discovery. This was a message, a key to something long forgotten, but not lost. But even as he stood there, the weight of history pressing around him, he felt a chill run down his spine. He wasn't alone. A faint rustling in the darkness, the scrape of stone on stone. He turned, his flashlight swinging wildly, but the passage was empty, the shadows dancing in the beam of light. He swallowed, his mouth dry, and he forced himself to focus on the symbols before him. He began to trace them, his breath coming in shallow gasps as he pieced together the story they told, of a city built on knowledge and power, of a people who had vanished beneath the earth, their secrets buried with them. But there was something else, something deeper, a warning woven into the patterns, a cautionary tale that sent a shiver down his spine. He leaned in closer, the symbols blurring as his eyes burned with exhaustion, and in the silence he heard it again, the faint whisper of voices, ancient and echoing, calling to him from the darkness. He snapped his head up, his heart hammering, but the chamber was still and silent once more. He took a step back, his mind racing, and he knew he couldn't do this alone. He needed help. Someone who could read these symbols, someone who understood the weight of what he had found. He turned and retraced his steps, his flashlight flickering as he stumbled back to the narrow passage, the darkness pressing like a living thing. The moment he emerged into the basement of the school, the cool air of the modern world rushed over him, a jarring contrast to the ancient chill of the chambers below. He pressed his back against the concrete wall, his breath ragged, the fragment clutched tight in his hand. He knew he had to tell someone, but who would believe him? The thought echoed in his mind as he climbed the stairs back to his classroom. Each step a reminder of the world he was leaving behind and the secrets he carried with him. That night, he sat in his empty classroom, the fragment resting on his desk, its symbols glowing softly in the lamplight. He flipped through his notes, the names of experts and historians scribbled in the margins, each one a potential lifeline in the sea of mystery that now surrounded him. His phone buzzed with a message. Dr. Xalenia Vargas, an archaeologist who had written about lost civilizations in the region. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the screen, and then he pressed send, his message brief but desperate. "I've found something. Something big. I need your help." As he waited for her reply, he looked around his classroom. The faded posters, the worn desks, the traces of chalk dust in the air, and he felt the weight of what he was about to share. The walls of his classroom had always held echoes of history, but now he knew that the past was alive, waiting to be unearthed. The minutes stretched into an hour, the silence of the empty room pressing around him, and then his phone buzzed again. Dr. Vargas's reply was simple, but it sent a thrill through his chest. "I'll be there tomorrow. Show me everything." He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion washing over him, but his mind was alive with possibility. The lost city of Xalenia was no longer a legend. It was real, and he had only begun to scratch the surface. But as he closed his eyes, a final image flickered in his mind. The shimmering symbols in darkness, the ancient voices whispering the silence, and the sense that somewhere in the shadows, something was watching, waiting. And in that darkness, a single thought echoed through the depths of his mind. This was only the beginning. The morning sun rose in a wash of pale gold, streaming through the windows of Mr. Thompson's classroom as he sat hunched over his desk, the weight of the fragment pressing against his palm like a heartbeat. He hadn't slept at all, the whispers of the lost city still echoing in his mind, mingling with the quiet creak of the building around him. Every sound seemed sharper, more alive, like the school itself was holding its breath. The door swung open with a quiet creak, and there stood Dr. Xalenia Vargas, her eyes sharp with curiosity and a glint of disbelief. She was a woman of careful logic and tempered excitement. But as she stepped forward and saw the fragment on the desk, her face went still. "You found this here?" she asked, her voice low. Mr. Thompson nodded, his fingers tracing the glowing symbols. "It was in a chamber beneath the school," he said. "There's more. A whole network of tunnels, rooms, like a buried city." Dr. Vargas leaned in, her eyes scanning the symbols with practiced intensity. "This is older than anything I've seen," she murmured, her fingers brushing the ancient stone. "And this pattern, it's a map. A map." The word sent a shiver through Mr. Thompson. He leaned closer, the thrill of discovery cutting through the fog of exhaustion. "A map to what?" he whispered. Dr. Vargas didn't answer. She pulled a small magnifying glass from her bag and studied the fragment, her brow furrowing as she traced the lines that coiled across the stone like a serpent. "These markings," she said, her voice hushed. "They're coordinates. But not just any. These are celestial alignments. The city was built to mirror the stars." She looked up at him, her eyes alight with wonder and something darker. "This isn't just a city. It's a library, a temple, a key to something beyond history." Mr. Thompson felt his breath catch. "But why here? Why beneath the school?" Dr. Vargas's lips thinned. "Because the city was hidden, erased. Someone didn't want it to be found, and if they went to such lengths to bury it." Her voice trailed off, but the unspoken warning lingered in the air. They packed their gear quickly, each movement driven by a mixture of excitement and unease. Mr. Thompson led the way back to the basement, the air growing colder with each step as they descended into the earth. The faint glow of the flashlight revealed the hidden door, the passage yawning open like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. "Are you sure about this?" Dr. Vargas asked, her voice a taut whisper. Mr. Thompson hesitated only a moment, then nodded. "I have to know," he said. "We have to know. Together." They stepped into the darkness. The passage seemed even narrower than before, the walls pressing in close as they moved deeper, the flickering light carving shadows that danced like specters around them. The air grew colder, each breath clouding in the dim glow. They reached the main chamber, the altar still standing sentinel in the center. Dr. Vargas moved quickly, her fingers tracing the symbols on the walls, her breath quickening as she deciphered the ancient language. "It's a story," she murmured. "A warning. This city was built to protect something, a secret so dangerous that they buried it with their own hands." Mr. Thompson's eyes went wide. "A secret?" She nodded, her face pale in the lamplight. "A power, a knowledge that could change everything we know about history, about humanity itself." As they spoke, a low rumble shivered to the ground, a tremor that sent dust cascading from the ceiling. Mr. Thompson's heart thudded in his chest. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Dr. Vargas's eyes darted to the darkness beyond the chamber. "We're not alone," she said softly. The words barely left her lips before the darkness seemed to come alive. A rustle of movement, a cold breath of air that smelled of earth and centuries. The whispering voices rose again, closer now, urgent and insistent. Mr. Thompson swung his flashlight in a wide arc, but the shadows swallowed the light. Dr. Vargas gripped his arm. "We have to go," she said, her voice shaking. "If this place is waking up." But even as she spoke, something moved in the darkness. A shape, tall and shrouded in shadow, its outline shimmering with an eerie glow. Mr. Thompson froze, the fragment in his hand growing warm, the symbols flaring brighter, as though answering the presence that now watched them. The figure stepped forward, its features obscured, and the whispering rose to a chorus that seemed to speak directly to Mr. Thompson's soul. "Leave," the voice said, an ancient, echoing command that reverberated through the stones. Dr. Vargas pulled him back, but he held his ground, his heart hammering in his chest. "What do you want?" he called out, his voice trembling. The figure didn't move, but the whispering changed, no longer a warning, but a question. "Will you listen?" the voice intoned, and Mr. Thompson felt a cold certainty settle over him. This was no accident. This was a choice. He turned to Dr. Vargas, her face pale and stricken in the flickering light. "I have to know," he said, his voice steady. "I have to hear what it's saying." She shook her head. "This isn't safe," she warned, her eyes wide with fear. But it was too late. The fragment in his hand glowed brighter still, and the air seemed to thrum with energy, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. The figure raised a hand, the motion slow and deliberate, and the ground shuddered beneath their feet. A seam cracked open in the floor, revealing a staircase that spiraled down into a pit of darkness. Mr. Thompson felt his breath catch, the weight of history and destiny pressing down on him like a mountain. He looked back at Dr. Vargas, his eyes alight with determination and dread. "This is just the beginning," he said, and without waiting for her reply, he took the first step down into the darkness, the ancient voices rising around him in a song of secrets and promises, the weight of the lost city pressing down with every breath. As Dr. Vargas called out his name, the light of the fragment flared one final time, then was swallowed by the shadows. And somewhere in the darkness, a doorway opened, waiting. The darkness wrapped around Mr. Thompson like a living shroud as he descended the winding staircase, each step echoing with the weight of centuries. The glow of the fragment in his hand pulsed with an eerie rhythm, casting long, trembling shadows on the ancient stone walls. Above him, Dr. Vargas's frantic shouts grew fainter until they dissolved into the silence of the earth itself. The air grew colder, the smell of damp stone and earth filling his lungs, and still he pressed on, driven by a need deeper than curiosity, a need to understand. At the bottom of the stairs, the passage opened into a vast chamber unlike anything he'd seen before. The walls were covered in carvings that shimmered with an inner light, depicting scenes of a civilization that had risen and fallen long before the first brick of the school had been laid. In the center of the chamber stood an altar, a perfect circle of black stone that seemed to drink in the light. Mr. Thompson stepped forward, the fragment in his hand vibrating like a living thing. As he approached, the carvings on the walls shifted and moved, the figures coming alive in the flickering glow. He saw the birth of the city, its towers reaching for the sky, its people forging a world of beauty and knowledge. He saw their fall, a great cataclysm that shattered their world and buried their secrets beneath the earth. And he saw the figure, the same shadow being that had spoken to him, standing at the heart of it all, a guardian of knowledge and a keeper of the past. "Why me?" Mr. Thompson whispered, his voice trembling in the vast silence. The figure stepped forward, its form shimmering with light and shadow. Because you listened, the voice said, an echo that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Because you cared enough to see what others ignored. Mr. Thompson felt the weight of those words settle over him. "What is this place?" he asked, his fingers tightening around the fragment. The figure's eyes glowed with a light that seemed to pierce the darkness. "This is the heart of the city, the source," it said, "a wellspring of knowledge and memory, hidden away to protect it from those who would use it for destruction." The fragment in his hand flared brighter, and Mr. Thompson felt a surge of understanding flood his mind. Images of the city's secrets, its power, its promise. He saw how the knowledge it contained could heal wounds, rewrite history, and reshape the world itself. But he also saw the price. The blood that had been shed to keep it hidden, the lives lost to protect its power. The figure's voice softened, a note of sorrow in its echo. "This is not just knowledge," it said. "It is responsibility, a burden and a gift. Once you take it, you cannot turn away." Mr. Thompson stood at the edge of the altar, the choice heavy in his chest. Above him, the school was just a memory. The ordinary classroom, the dusty bookshelves, the lessons of history he had once thought were enough. Here, in the heart of the lost city, he saw that history was not just dates and facts. It was living, breathing, waiting to be heard. He took a breath, his mind swirling with fear and wonder. "I accept," he said. The figure raised its hand, and the fragment in Mr. Thompson's grasp blazed with a white light that filled the chamber, searing away the darkness. He felt the knowledge pour into him, a torrent of voices, memories, truths that spanned millennia. It was overwhelming, like drowning in the ocean of time itself. But he held on, his mind expanding with every heartbeat. When the light finally dimmed, Mr. Thompson stood alone in the silent chamber. The figure was gone, its task complete. He looked down at the fragment, now cold and lifeless in his palm. But he felt it still inside him, the weight of the city, the voices of its past, the secrets that could change everything. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step a testament to the choice he had made. At the top, Dr. Vargas was waiting, her face pale and her eyes wide with relief and fear. "What happened?" she demanded, reaching for him. Mr. Thompson looked at her, his eyes alight with a calm certainty. "I found the city," he said softly, "and it found me. Together." They emerged from the basement, the morning sun breaking over the horizon, painting the world in gold and fire. The school stood quiet and still, but Mr. Thompson knew that nothing would ever be the same again. As he stepped back into his classroom, he looked at the old maps and dusty books with new eyes. The secrets of the lost city were inside him now, a living library that no one could erase. Outside, he could hear the footsteps of students arriving, their laughter bright and full of possibility. Mr. Thompson smiled faintly, feeling the weight of the city's legacy pressing on his shoulders. He would share what he could. Teach them not just a history of empires and kings, but the history beneath their feet, the history that lived in the earth itself. But even as he turned to greet the new day, he felt the whispers of the city still echoing in his mind, a promise and a warning. The knowledge was his, but for how long? And as the sun rose higher, he couldn't shake the feeling that the city's secrets were only beginning to reveal themselves. Because in the shadows of the school, beneath the ordinary and the known, something had been awakened, and it was waiting. Hit that like button, subscribe for more stories that matter, and let's keep the conversation going.